Part 1, November 7, 3056. Salford, Draconis Combine. The Scout-class jumpship Teledyne held position in its designated space at the rim of the control area. The control station that hung clear of the jump point had directed the ship there as soon as it had emerged from its jump into the system. The master of the vessel, Reston Bannon, had been fuming ever since. For 14 days, the Teledyne had hung there recharging its propulsion system. He was ready to go, but still had not been issued clearance. And he still had no cargo. Or no cargo aboard ship, that is. Waiting for him right now on the surface of Salford was a dropship packed bulkhead to bulkhead, deck to overhead, with valuable Cholobara wine from the planet Shibukawa. Cholobara was a delicate and short-lived beverage of amazing potency. Not only was the natural alcoholic content more than twice that of normal wine, but the Cholobara fruit was also an amazing aphrodisiac. Both features made demand for the brew astronomical, but the wine would only maintain its aphrodisiac qualities for a period of just under 2 months. That made speedy transport a priority for those who wanted the profits that the wine's dated amphor commanded. Bannon should have had the cargo loaded and ready for transport to the planet Hartshill as soon as the KF drive was recharged. But he'd been held in orbit instead. A Scout-class starship like the Teledyne was too inefficient to carry bulk cargo. The few still in use by the Draconis Combine military served to carry single dropships of high military priority. In the civilian world, Scouts were used for valuable single cargoes. One dropship loads like Bannon's cargo of Cholobara. Bannon had bought the Teledyne at auction precisely for the purpose of making these high-profit runs. And now, he was stuck with his cargo going bad on the surface and no clearance to jump. "Message from station," said First Mate Elizabeth Hund as she looked up from the comm panel. "They want another report on our readiness status."
"Tell them to refer to my report of 3 hours ago,"
snapped Bannon.
"Tell them that I've been waiting here, fully charged, for the last 4 days, and they know it. Tell them that if they don't give me clearance to take cargo and depart, I'll report their dereliction to Planet Control."
Bannon began to heave himself from his command chair, scattering breadcrumbs that instantly formed a zero-G cloud that floated behind him as he moved. He'd been in almost constant residence in the command chair ever since the KF drive was recharged and ready to go. He had a day cabin just off the bridge, but like most ship commanders, he preferred to live on the bridge when he was operational. And when Reston Bannon lived somewhere, he really lived there. He took his meals there, and he slept there. He never moved except for absolute necessities. The remnants of the last 3 meals were splattered across his ample belly. Hund watched her master and commander, waiting for the spasm of anger to pass. She had served with Bannon for years, and she knew what would happen now. Bannon would froth and fume for a few moments before subsiding again into acquiescence. She watched as the commander made to lift his bulk from his chair, only to sink back immediately. His countenance changed from the flush of anger to pale fear. Had Hund sent the message as stated, there would have been an equally abrupt reply from the station. The result would probably have been for Bannon to spend another 14 days in orbit.
"Just tell them we're ready,"
he sighed, settling into the command chair once more. "Message sent, sir," noted Hund, as she turned back to the console. She'd known what the message would be even before Bannon spoke again, and she had keyed in their current status. The message flashed across the 70 kilometers to the station. "They're sending again." First Mate Hund watched the panel as the messages scrolled across the screen. "Cargo approaching from Salford. We have jump coordinates and clearance to depart. Priority 1.
Priority 1? Why priority 1? We've been hanging here for days, and now we get a priority 1 departure order? Why don't those people ever get it right?
Bannon tapped the master control on the arm of the command chair and the message appeared. He scanned down the text, most of which was administrative garbage concerning account numbers and other administrative. His onboard computers would have a fine time digesting the material, which would of course be turned over to the appropriate bureaus of the Draconis Combine and Comstar. That was how the various great houses kept track of all the ships operating throughout the inner sphere. It was how they could tell if there were any unauthorized expeditions. And if there was one thing the leaders of the Draconis Combine did not like, it was unauthorized visitors to their star systems. Such occurrences could only mean activity by pirates or black marketeers, or worse. At the time Bannon had bought the Teledyne, he had carefully considered the choice between legitimate operations or entering that shadow world of pirate jump points and black market dealings. The profits from illegal trading were enormous, but the risks were equally high. Bannon liked the thought of credits building up in secret accounts, but he didn't like the thought of what the Draconis Combine would do to him if he got caught. The stories of what had happened to others who'd been arrested for such crimes were enough to make a strong man's blood run cold. And Reston Bannon was not a strong man. As he reached the end of the message, his face went purple with rage.
"What?" he shouted. "What is this nonsense? Military cargo? I've been given military cargo?"
Bannon pounded the arm of the command chair in frustration. Damn them to hell, he thought, ruining the day he had ever signed a contract with the government of the Draconis Combine. He knew that, legally, they had every right to commandeer his ship. That didn't mean he had to like it. "They're sending a hold on the Priority 1, said Hund in an even voice, "and coordinates for a new destination." She knew it was no use showing any emotion. Bannon would have enough for both of them. "Looks like they're sending us to the middle of nowhere," she said, almost to herself, then noted that they'd be receiving sealed orders for additional jumps after the first. Reston Bannon burrowed down into the command chair and clamped his jaws shut tight. He would remain that way until the hold on the ship's departure was lifted. He was still sitting in exactly the same position 3 hours later when the jump ship's docking collar locked the Leopard-class dropship to its side. He was still in the same position when the skipper of the dropship reported to the bridge of the Teledyne. Reston Bannon was good and ready for the unfortunate skipper. He'd had plenty of time to prepare his speech to the junior commander about the inefficiency of the Draconis Combine, about the temerity of the military in general, and about the overblown egos of the people in the control station. The tirade would be a work of art. It would start abruptly, become soft and mellifluous, then end in a high-pitched scream. It would be a beautiful piece of rhetoric, not giving the battered skipper the least opportunity to interrupt or to answer. Unfortunately, the speech was never given. When Parker DeVood, the dropship captain, floated onto the bridge of the Teledyne, it was with an air calculated to send Bannon over the edge. Following close behind him was the Draconis Combine Show Saw in full combat gear. The great speech died on Bannon's lips. He was fully capable of chewing out a pilot, but hadn't nearly enough spine to take on a member of the Combine's regular military as well. But then the appearance of the third man onto the bridge almost gave him the courage. Seeing that the man was obviously both a mech pilot and a mercenary, Bannon squirmed in anger. Mech warriors were bad enough with their insufferable arrogance, but mercenaries made Bannon's skin crawl. He bit his lip.
Welcome aboard the Teledyne, he said. The jump points have been plotted and laid in. We can make the transit at once. Whatever you say, boss, replied the pilot. Ready when you are. The comment was casual, not at all the attitude a dropship pilot should have toward a jumpship master. He thumbed toward the show saw. This here's the man with the say-so. I go with him. I have noted your ship, Master Bannon, said the show saw. I am Yubari Takuda of the Draconus Elite Strike Team 6654. I am in command of this mission and in charge of the Vorstlands until they arrive at their destination. Please sign an appropriate officer to escort me on an inspection of your ship. Pilot Paka Davud and Mr. Gaba Vost will remain in the dropship and await my return. Bannon squirmed deeper into his command chair. He could escort Takuda as was proper, but the jumpship master had no intention of showing that much courtesy. He could assign Elizabeth Hund, but she was even more necessary to the bridge than Bannon. The job fell to the third officer on board, even though he was more a warrant officer than a real one. Bannon pressed the comm panel. Mr. Jacobs to the bridge. He turned to Takuda. My engineer will escort you while my first officer and I prepare for departure. If Takuda was aware of the insult, he did not show it. I will be honored by assistance from your fine engineer, he said smoothly. Jacobs appeared on the bridge moments later, still wearing his utility belt and wiping his hands on a rag. He was surprised to see the conclave around Bannon's chair. Ready when you are, Reston, he said. What's going on? You will escort Showsaw Takuda through the Teledyne. Show him everything. Take as long as he needs. The Showsaw is a desk officer, so there is nothing he does not know. Bannon added a slight sneer to the last comment. I will be honored by your expertise, said Takuda to Jacobs. I am sure that our inspection of the ship will be most thorough. He turned again to Bannon. Many thanks for your hospitality, Commander. Takuda made a slight bow from the waist. 4 hours later, Jacobs reported from engineering that the inspection was complete. At almost the same moment, the space station released the Teledyne from its imprisonment. Reston Bannon had not moved from his command seat, and he gave the command to get the ship going even before Hund could finish repeating the message. Warning klaxons sounded through the diminutive hull of the jump ship as the thrusters maneuvered the ship toward the hypothetical, mathematical point from which it would make its interstellar jump through hyperspace. The ship steadied for a moment as it rotated onto the correct heading. Then it stepped forward and through the door. The reaction was almost instantaneous. First, a slight shudder as the ship made the transition to KF drive. Then, another more jarring shock. The sensors on the bridge exploded in a shower of sparks. Hund, crouched over the navigational console, had just enough time to raise her hands to her face to protect her eyes from the surge. Both she and Bannon were strapped into their seats, secure against a possible accident, but even with their restraints, they thrashed about from the impact. As the smoke cleared from the bridge, the foul air drawn swiftly away by the fans of the life support system, warning lights flashed from every station. The automatic crash sirens howled out of control. The overhead lumen panels died as power was diverted to stabilization thrusters. The battle lanterns replaced the departing light with a soft glow. Hund removed her hands from her face and studied the navigational control. Current speed? 700,000 kilometers, he reported. What? We can't be going that fast. Yes, sir. I know that. But that's what's being shown. Where are we? I have no idea. Transferring readouts to your station.
Boone fingered a pressure-activated switch on the arm of her chair. The information was transferred immediately to the sponson-mounted monitor beside Bannon. He saw the numbers glowing serenely from the screen. He saw them, but did not comprehend, could not comprehend, the information they represented. The speed of the Teledyne was as the navigator had reported. The ship was tumbling through space at a velocity of more than 700,000 kilometers per hour. The polar grid coordinate readout was nothing but a series of nines. Bannon stared at the numbers, his mind numb. Commanders of starships did not have to know everything, only where to look in their ship's computer information banks to find the answers. But right now, Bannon lacked enough information even to ask an intelligent question. Indeed, he was afraid to ask anything for fear that the answer would be even more confusing than the information he already possessed. "Sensors report a habitable planet," remarked Hund. "There's something in orbit around it. Something metallic. I'm not sure, but the readings match a deployed jump ship sail. It's bigger than we are." She was scanning the rapidly approaching star and its associated cluster of satellites. She continued to study the monitor, the green glow of the light giving her face a deathly pallor. "We're going too fast. There's no way we can approach it safely. Window of opportunity for maneuvering is past. We'll have to abandon and take our chances in getting the boat down to the planet." She turned toward Bannon when he made no reply. Her commander was still staring at the monitor, his face a mask of fear and doubt. Hoon looked back to her own station, saw the numbers representing the point of no return scrolling downward with alarming rapidity. "We'll have to abandon now, sir." There was still no answer from the command chair. She turned back and reached down between her legs to grasp the red emergency override handle. Bracing her feet, she pulled upward with surprising force. The response was instantaneous. All the battle lanterns on the bridge blinked out and came back on. The sliding doors that had closed on impact with the cosmic anomaly slid open. There was a rush of escaping air as the Teledyne's life support system began to compensate for the vagaries of pressure. The loudspeakers welded to the corners of each compartment blared their pre-recorded warning. "Now hear this! Now hear this! Abandon ship! Abandon ship! This is no drill! This is no drill! Abandon ship! Abandon ship!" Hoon glanced back at her station. A series of red lights glowed along the arm of her chair. She depressed each in sequence, waiting until the light changed to green before going on to the next. The buttons represented the escape sequence that would implant the Teledyne's current coordinates, as if they meant anything, as well as the azimuth and range to the nearest habitable planet into the lifeboat and the docked dropship. The sequence also released those same two smaller vessels from the jump ship. With the panel showing all green, Hoon cut away from her station and moved toward the ship's immobilized commander. Gently, she uncoupled the restraining harness and got him out of the chair. Man didn't fight or resist. It was like directing a somnambulist. The corridor to the lifeboat station glowed red from the emergency lighting. It didn't take long to reach the tiny escape shuttle, where Jacobs was already in place in the command seat. According to standard operating procedure, the first crew member into the shuttle took the command chair. There was no precedence in an emergency. Hoon buckled the still docile Bannon into an open seat and took her position beside Jacobs. Together they went down the escape checklist. The door slid shut. Jacobs thumbed the thrusters, and the Teledyne II slid gently away from the stricken mothership. As they cleared the hull, they could see the dropship fighting to get free of the docking collar, which had been warped by the violence of the impact and subsequent gyrations. Under full thruster power as it struggled to break free, the dropship suddenly ripped its way clear with a final lurch and then tumbled away from the Teledyne. Jacobs let the escape shuttle hang for a moment as he watched for the dropship to steady itself in a flurry of thruster fire onto a parallel course. Then he opened the thruster engines, and the Teledyne II began its journey toward the unknown blue orb that was the only safe haven for the tiny crew and anyone else who had survived inside the dropship.